Today is Sunday, July 20th, 2025, and this is episode 315 of the Defensive Security Podcast. And my name is Jerry Bell, and joining me tonight, as always, is Mr. Andrew Callett.
Good evening, Jerry, sir. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
Sunday yet again, though. I don't know how the weekend goes by so fast.
Yep. I understand.
Well, I mean, every day is Saturday for you, though, isn't it?
Every day, although it's getting a little monotonous, I suppose.
Have you thought about Walmart? I mean, they can use greeters.
I don't know that they do anymore.
It's probably true. Well, maybe somebody will take pity on you and hear our pleas and offer you a job.
That's right. And speaking of which, the thoughts and opinions that we express are ours, not those of our employers. And also a reminder to our Patreon donors that we love you, we appreciate you, you are awesome. And by the way, if you would like to become one, you can go to our Patreon site. It's patreon.com/defensivesec.
And when Jerry says he loves you, that comes with a court-ordered 500-foot distance. Don't worry.
It's fair enough. Fair enough. And just also as a reminder, we will be effective with this episode, releasing about a week behind. So our Patreon listeners will have access to this a week before everybody else. And we will also maintain 2 stories at the end that are exclusive to our Patreon sponsors. So really, really trying to incentivize people to support the show. So thank you to those who do. And, certainly we want to continue providing value, whether or not you're able to donate. But, we want to do something extra special for those of you who do donate. And also we have heard you that, there are some people asking for live streams. And so we're talking about, that might be something coming up in the future. Also, by the time this gets released, I will have store.defensivesecurity.org will be live, and you will be able to order stuff.
Nice.
With actual an actual range of sizes and whatnot. So I'm guessing there will be some hiccups. So pack your patience, as they say. But that's the plan. And there should be some more stuff than we had on the old store, and some nicer options as well.
True. And I just want to echo thanks as well to all of our Patreon donors. You guys are awesome. It really does help. This is a labor of love for Jerry and I for 15 years now. And
it's been a long time.
Yeah. So it costs some money and some time, and we're certainly not making Rogan bucks, but we appreciate that any donation to help offset the costs for hosting and bandwidth and all that jazz. So it's also good. And I will also say, we have, if you're in the Atlanta area, we're going to have a live appearance coming up at a security show in August. So
that's right. So August 20th. It's Mission Security? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mission Critical Systems is a local security VAR in Atlanta, and they've asked Jerry and I, God knows why, to keynote the lunch talk, and we're going to do kind of a live show with some guests. So if you're interested, check it out. We'll throw the URL in the show notes, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about it. But coming up August 20th, which is at least 1 month from today, as of the day we're recording.
Yeah, it'll probably be the first and last time we get to do that.
So come witness the train wreck in person.
That's right. That's right. All right. So let us jump into our stories for today. And the first one comes from Bleeping Computer, and the title here is Lame Hug Malware Uses AI LLM to Craft Windows Data Theft Commands in Real Time.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so the title, I think, kind of belies the whole story here, but I think what I found novel is that this is really going to start, I think, the major transformation of how best to say it, reducing the level of competence required to pull off complex attacks.
Right.
It's been going on for a while now. We've seen that happening for a while, but I think this is the first time that I've seen an instance where that the bad actors are actually using kind of live something like an LLM to help guide the progression of their intrusion. I think in terms of defensive tactics, all of the same stuff applies, right? They have to get in somehow. This is really, I think, an expediency benefit for the threat actors. They're able to operate more quickly, and so I would expect that we will see, assuming that this tactic becomes widespread, I would expect that we would see a reduction in dwell time before, from initial intrusion until mission attainment, which I think in this instance, allegedly, it was data theft. So
Yeah, what I found interesting, and just to, it may not be super clear in the title, but what's different about this is it's not just that you're using an LLM to craft the attack. They're dropping the malware, which is calling the LLM on the machine they've infected
mm-hmm.
to craft the commands for the next step. So it's actually, if you go look at it, like it's saying, hey, the malware drops on the machine is then reaching out to the LLM to get live commands to run for the next step. So it could be custom for every single attack, or as that LLM progresses. It's not like it was asked the LLM once to come up with a playbook. It's doing a live interaction with the LLM on the compromised host, asking for commands to run for that particular system and how to exploit that system. That's what I think is so interesting and different about this. And
That's good point. It's a great
yeah,
it's a great point.
So yeah, this is the first that I know of, and in fact, they even say it in the article that it's the first publicly documented to include live interactive LLM support to carry out the attacker's tasks. So, to your point, yeah, they don't need to necessarily know how to hack anymore. They still need a dropper. They still need that initial exploitation methodology. But here it looks like they're gathering information, trying to find interesting documents and information on the endpoint, and then exfiltrating it without actually knowing the commands they need to run. They're just asking the LLM, what commands do I need to run on a Windows system to do XYZ? And then taking that output and then executing those commands live on the compromised host, which I find pretty interesting. And I think we're going to see more of it.
Yeah, so I would expect as we're entering the phase of AI where we're transitioning away from it just being a chatbot to being more agentic, where it's actually able to do stuff for us. My expectation is that we're going to see an increase in I guess I'll just coin a stupid term, vibe hacking, right? Where the bad actors are effectively saying, look, I want a copy of all the Word docs, PowerPoints, Excel files, and whatnot from as many computers in this organization as possible, or I want you to elevate your privileges to system and create a new user ID that has domain administrator privileges, and then I want you to push out this ransomware package to all system. I think kind of the sky's the limit on what what could be done, and then from a defensive side, it really comes down to, what guardrails do we have in place to prevent that and detect that it might actually be in the process of happening. Where I think this kind of creates a challenge is that in the past, unless you were, a really, really important target, that this was probably a process that could happen over days, weeks, months. Now with this, it's, I think we're going to perhaps see time, a much more compressed timeline of how these attacks progress. And then the other is that they're not limited by, hands on keyboards necessarily, right? So if you are a threat actor, you were previously, interactively working with with the victim systems, you were constrained just by how many hands and eyeballs you could commit to that. Now with this, if you are an astute, if you're astute at leveraging these AI or these LLM and agent based technologies, like you could really scale that out pretty well. I don't know where this is going to land, but I think it's going to put even more focus on the basics,
Yeah.
strong authentication, detecting inappropriate outbound communication. I don't know that there's anything novel from that perspective. Like if the dropper can't connect to the LLM to get its instructions, then nothing is going to happen. If your EDR or XDR, MDR, whatever agent is detecting and blocking it, then nothing's going to happen. But if you don't have that,
Block and track outbound comms. Come on, man. Nobody's got time for that. What are you talking about?
Well, I don't know what
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm like, I could foresee a circumstance where they get some sort of dropper on the host and then SELM, okay, scan this host for all installed applications and versions, cross-reference that against known exploits for privilege escalation, and then craft that exploit and execute that exploit. I mean, that is kind of becoming very real and within the realm of possible at this point. And they don't have to care anymore. They don't have to like worry too much about how to do it as much as what they want to do. And it's almost getting to a point, if you can describe it to the LM accurately enough, it has a good chance of figuring out how to do it and executing on that. And that's a whole different world, man. The barrier to entry has got a lot lower.
I don't want to, I don't want to overstate it, but I'm going to overstate it. Ransomware was a big inflection point for security, and we've talked about that in the past. It changed the complexion of our jobs pretty radically. But the before times, you basically hoped that you were not on anybody's radar as a victim, and that changed after ransomware became a thing. Like everybody was fair game. There really was nobody that wasn't a potential target. And so I think that this has a potential to drive a similar sea change in security. It's just as going to reduce, I think, the barrier to entry. Now, certainly, look, for some period of time, this is going to suck. Like I'm not, I don't have any missed expectations here. Like it's going to suck, but like all things, the bad actors are going to refine this. They're going to hone their craft. They're going to share best practices. The models that they're using are going to get better. The interfaces that they have between the models and their malware are going to improve. All this stuff is going to get refined over time. And so, yeah, it might suck today. It's going to suck less tomorrow. It's going to suck a lot less in a month or 2 months or 6 months. And so, I would say let's not, there's a lot of naysayers about AI, and for good reason, but I think we ignore this at our peril. And I have this kind of bad feeling in the pit of my stomach that this is going to be another inflection point.
It could be what you had for lunch, just as a.
It could be that pizza was a little bit old.
But no, I'm also not an ace here. I said this on multiple shows recently. I think the bad guys are going to be a little ahead of us in finding creative ways to use AI to further their attacks. And as always, it just means that we have to level up in the defensive side. And the only easy day was yesterday, to steal a phrase from the military. It doesn't get easier; we just get better, in theory.
Ooh. So, speaking of getting easier, the next story comes from Ars Technica, and the title here is "Hackers Exploit a Blind Spot by Hiding Malware Inside DNS Records."
This feels like what's old is new again, but
yeah, it really is. The DNS has been abused by bad actors for a long time, whether it's fast flux or there's been scripts encoded in text records for a long time. What seems to be new and novel here is the way that this particular threat actor structured the attack. So what they did was they hex encoded some kind of garden variety malware, and they broke it up into a series of text records that were split across a bunch of subdomains of a parent domain. And then the dropper, which didn't necessarily have any malicious commands into itself, would then pull those text records down, assemble them, and then I won't say decrypt, but deobfuscate the malware back into a binary, and then run it. And the point here is that we have lots of security tooling at most layers, but the one thing that we don't have a lot of maturity around is DNS. And in fact, they point out in this article that we, in some ways, again, from a security versus privacy, I'm going to draw a line there, right? The DNS over HTTPS is kind of working at odds, because now in the normal deployment mode, where your browser is making a direct connection out to a DNS server, or your system is, and you as an IT security organization for a company or other organization, you're really inhibited in your ability to monitor DNS queries. And again, from a privacy perspective, that's it's a great thing, but from a security perspective, it's maybe not such a great thing, because now you can't apply, at least easily, you can't apply normal anomaly detection tactics to your DNS flows,
which is a common. We were just talking about monitoring for exfil or outbound connections. Like you said, very few people monitor DNS, and now we have encrypted DNS, as you were talking about, which is even less monitored. There are tools out there, by the way. I think Infoblox might be one vendor. There's others out there that will, in essence, proxy your DNS to scrub it for this sort of thing, but they're not commonly used, and it is a fairly wide open blind spot that I think is being exposed here. It's clever. It's very clever. The other thing I was going to mention is, at least in my experience lately, it's amazing how many otherwise very competent IT and security people I run into who do not understand the core concepts of DNS at all. It feels like it's been so abstracted away in the age of cloud and SaaS and such that we've lost a lot of DNS skill set. Like when you and I know this is hey, we're old back in the day story, but when you and I are coming up, man, we had to, like, DNS was a big part of the job to understand it, to get it to work right, to fiddle with it. And it's been so commoditized and made, I don't know, almost, again, abstracted away from the standard engineer, that a lot of engineers nowadays, or IT folks, never actually touch it and don't necessarily understand the full infrastructure and the full cycle around it. In fact, one of my favorite things to do in an interview for a technical position is when ask an applicant, you type a URL into a browser and hit enter. Tell me everything that happens between that moment and the time the page is done rendering. And I really want them to get into how DNS is queried, how that flows, how the traffic flows. And it's amazing how many just don't understand DNS, and maybe because they don't have to. But it feels like understanding that, like understanding how BGP works, is a big part of understanding how the internet works. And I don't know, I guess I'm just having the old person rant that it frustrates me that a lot of people have lost that skill set.
It's becoming more of a specialized skill. That's for sure. It's, it's a lot of the stuff is things that are outsourced now. I mean, how many people run their own voicemail servers for their organizations, right? Like there's just not a lot of it. I mean, yeah, it happens. And so I'm sure I'll get some emails saying, what are you talking about? I run voicemail, but it's increasingly rare. And I think it's also increasingly rare that, DNS, at least on the infrastructure side, is something that you run in-house. And so I think it's just become kind of out of sight, out of mind. And where I think this article is really trying to drive us to is that if you can have really sophisticated protections around ensuring that you don't have malware entering your organization. You can have sandboxes for things coming in via email. You can be scanning attachments that come in through proxies over web, and all these things. But this is an avenue where files could be reassembled inside your organization, having evaded all of the normal scanning techniques, and then you're left relying on whatever client side security software that you have on your device, whether that's EDR or antivirus, whatever, and you hope that it gets detected.
That's why we just need to ban all executables.
True. Good point. I mean, think about how much easier our jobs would be if nothing ran.
Everything's just a dumb terminal connected back to a mainframe. That's all you get. Sorry.
Save a lot of bandwidth too. Back
just
to
a CRC. That's right. Just a text front end. That's all you get.
Anyway, I think DNS has been a blind spot for a long time. It has. I mean, God, I remember being used to shuttle malicious bash scripts and PowerShell scripts like 10, 15 years ago. Like that's nothing new.
Well, we also used to see a lot of malicious activity change the DNS servers that the host was looking at and drive them to a compromised DNS server to give them bad lookups. Again, this goes back to, if you don't understand how DNS works, you don't understand why that's a problem. You don't understand how that can be abused. But if I hijacked what resolves, whitehouse.gov to what I want it to be, I now send your host wherever I want you to go. And it's a very efficient way to force traffic to my attacker-owned system. Whether that's web traffic, which is predominant, or any kind. DNS underlies everything. And this is again where certificates and authentication and that sort of thing are supposed to help that, but there are lots of ways that people just bypass all those alerts and messages and just click through. So I think it's a lot more powerful if I can manipulate your DNS server or your DNS lookups. It's a lot more powerful than I think a lot of people realize in terms of nefarious activity. And this is a different aspect of that, of just using the way that data can be stored in DNS as a non-investigated, non what's the word I want to look for here? There's nothing monitoring, like you said earlier. It's not seen as an avenue for transferring data like it is. So it's not monitored and watched for malicious activity, but another way that it can be abused.
Yeah. And, as you are wont to say, this isn't necessarily the world's most common attack tactic, right? So the fact that this appears as an article doesn't necessarily mean like that this is widespread. However, I think we have to be cognizant of where our blind spots are. And I think there are some organizations, and I used to work for one, that do a good job of monitoring DNS, but I don't know that is a common. It's expensive, and I don't know that a lot of when you have a fixed amount of money to spend on things, I'm not sure that often rises to the top. But at the same time, it's important for people to understand where their blind spots are.
Yeah. But if you don't have the basics right, this is deeper down the maturity path, I would say, to worry about. But if you're investigating or an incident responder, it's good to know that this sort of technique does exist. You may not encounter it much, but it's out there.
Yeah. And speaking of basics, our next story
that is not where I thought you were going.
Reading.
That's not where I thought you were going with that. But carry on.
Your mom. There you go.
Thanks.
The title here is fully patched Sonic Wall gear under likely 0-day attack. So,
fully patched end of life Sonic Wall gear. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I made a funny video about this, because I have a hard time with the 0-day moniker being applied to this.
Why is that?
I mean, technically, there apparently is an exploit that isn't patched, and so I guess it meets the criteria of a 0-day. But let's not lose sight of the fact that this is a appliance that went end of life almost 8 years ago. Like end of life, not like was sold, and like I think it came out in 2011. And it went end of life in 2017. It is now 2025.
Yes.
And the best part is of this.
So what you're saying, it's almost old enough for Leonardo DiCaprio to date it.
Ooh. Yeah, I suppose so. Ouch.
That was my one attempt at a pop culture reference. That's it. That's all you get. It wasn't even a very good one. I'm old. I'm out of touch. Something Taylor Swift. I don't know. That's all I got.
Back on track. Focus. Lock in. So again, it's an old device. What is very interesting about this particular attack is they don't actually know for sure that it is in fact a new 0-day, because there are so many existing unpatched vulnerabilities that could actually be the cause or the avenue, the vector of attack here. And so there's a hypothesis that maybe it is a new 0-day, but maybe it isn't. Maybe they're stealing credentials through some new vulnerability. Maybe they've stolen them through some previous attack. We don't know. What we do know is that the devices are, very old, very out of date, not receiving patches, and vulnerable to a whole bunch of stuff that we already know about.
And not just receiving patches, not receiving research, not receiving, vendor. Like if you went to the vendor in general, I can't say specifically about Sonic Wall, but in general, when a vendor said something is end of life, and you show up 2 years later with a proof of concept vulnerability, they go, that's nice, it's end of life, we don't care. They're not going to invest time. That's the whole point of being end of life. It's off their radar. They're done with it. They have left. It has left the building. They've moved on. They don't care anymore. They're over it. was trying to come up with a good joke. So we have no idea how many new and interesting exploits might have been found in that side. This is why we tell people not to run end of life stuff, because we have no ability as security folks to do our normal job of keeping an eye out for patches and patching, because it's not in the ecosystem any longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by the way, this is not necessarily a smack on SonicWall. Like
No.
all of these firewalls end up having vulnerabilities. I think the issue here is there are still apparently quite a few organizations that are running these now 8-year, out of support devices on their network not just on their network, but at the edge of their network, connected to the internet. And, they're getting compromised. And I don't think anybody should be surprised by that. I will tell you, when I was doing the CISO thing, the most common reason our suppliers got hacked was because they had end of life firewalls.
Jeez. So let's dig in that for a second. What do you think it's purely a budget issue of why these end up hanging around? It's not broke, don't fix it. Do you think most of these folks know they have end of life? They don't care. They don't have the budget. They're not aware. Why do these persist?
In many of the instances that I had experience with, a lot of smaller organizations kind of do these forklift upgrades of their infrastructure. And so like they will, they have this intention of, hey, look, all my stuff is out of date. Like my firewall, my switches, my router, my servers, it's all old. And we got some money and we're going to we're building new stuff. And so, but until that new stuff is up and running, that old stuff has to stay there. And what I observed was it kind of like remodeling your kitchen. It always takes a lot longer than you're expecting to set up some new, your new IT environment, and therefore, your old IT environment is left running for a lot longer, and there's almost no appetite to spend any money on it because you're spending all of your money on this new environment. And so that was a very common problem that I saw. I think there's also, some of the others where, look, I viewed it as, one of them, like I thought the thought that came to my mind was like, they're treating it like a washing machine. Like they, it's something they expected to just run. Like it doesn't need, it doesn't need to be replaced. It can go end of life. The vendor can stop supporting it, but as long as it continues to wash the clothes, just let it do its thing. And I think that happens, quite often. I know that we've seen that a lot with like, Cisco and other network devices where, you keep sending me the meme about the 6509 chassis. Like, it's not just a, it's a 40-year commitment. And I think that is real. Like, I think a lot of organizations that, they'll spend a lot of money on certain components of their infrastructure and are very hesitant because, for every dollar you spend on your firewall, like that's another dollar you can't spend on another salesperson or like whatever. And so, I don't know if firewalls themselves, because it's viewed as like a security appliance and therefore like, well, why would I need, like, it's a firewall. It shouldn't allow any traffic to come into it. So I think there could be a kind of a layman's view of firewalls not being as susceptible to security issues as other things.
Yeah, we've seen the debate flare from time to time. I haven't heard it lately, but there used to be a pretty strong ISPs or some sort of centralized entity should take action to protect the rest of the internet from perceived irresponsible, I'm going to use an old term here, netizens, right? People connected to the internet. The idea was, in this case, for instance, that the ISPs or some central authority would be empowered to turn off the network connection of those who are using compromised, old, out of date, insecure technology to protect the rest of the network. I don't agree with that, by the way. I don't think that is the way it should be done. But there is a strong, over time, there's been, it ebbs and flows, this strong argument of, there's all these botnets out there that are happening because of people's routers at home that aren't being updated. We can't just let people stay on the network with these hostile devices they don't know how to run, et cetera, et cetera. And I can see this playing back into that debate of what do you do in this case? And is there a responsibility of the ISP or some other government entity to take proactive action in these cases? I see compelling arguments on both sides. My viewpoint typically will fall on no. I don't want to force anyone to do anything, but I can see people arguing very strongly that there's a responsibility if you're going to connect to the network, which affects everybody else, that you need to have to do the basics properly, which at the very least is run patched perimeter devices. I don't know. What do you think?
It's like so many things in life. You're not just hurting yourself. If you were, I think I would have less desire for somebody like an ISP to take action if it was only them that they could hurt, themselves that they could hurt. But the reality is that, like, the person that, or the entity that gets hurt the least seems like it's always the one that was hacked and saved money by not upgrading their firewalls. It's the people whose data got stolen. It's the other organizations who are attacked as a result of that, entity being hacked and so on. So, I just don't know that we have incentives. I don't think the incentive structure is right. Like if you operate one of these things insecurely, what's the downside? Well, you have to pay a fine. Maybe you get sued. Maybe.
So maybe what we need to do is publicly shame and raise awareness. Like we could do something like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but like Mothers Against Insecure Perimeter Devices, which just rolls off the tongue.
But then so here's the. Well, go ahead, finish your thought, and then I'll.
Unpatched browsing is drunk browsing. I don't know. I'll work. I'll work on the slogan. Okay, I'll work on it.
But then, so all that makes sense. But then you get to the point where you realize, like, BitSite and Security Scorecard and whatnot are already things, and we already shake our fists at.
But do they have very special after-school specials about the danger of browsing unprotected?
No, they don't. Not that I know of.
Do they have the boy in the plastic patching? I'll work on this. I think there's something here. I think we could reach back
here
to the 80s and learn how to inform people properly. We could have singing animations about I'm just a patch, and how patches get made and applied, kind of akin to I'm just a bill. That taught us everything we need to know about legislation.
Schoolhouse.
I'm explaining
Rock,
for
the Schoolhouse Rock version of patching, right?
I think so. I'm explaining for the youngins. But have you been injured by it? Have you been injured by an insecure router? Call me, Bob, the router lawyer. I don't know. Sorry.
I don't know what the answer is, but it feels like it'd be interesting to see, like, what percentage of organizations don't upgrade their firewalls on time.
Have you thought about maybe becoming an internet vigilante?
Yes.
You could you could be the Batman of out of end of life routers and firewalls. Who are you? I'm Patchman.
He runs around with scissors breaking into data centers.
I think so. I think we could develop. I think there's a TV show here. Maybe a series of movies.
And apparently animated after school specials. Yes.
I'm gonna just
like
move
Daredevil.
on now,
I mean, it would be like Daredevil, but
but like
for
Dare.
right?
Instead of say no to drugs, it's say no to end of life. Nancy Reagan says say no to end of life.
I don't even know where to go from here. Which it's actually good timing because
Dr. Kevorkian says say no to end of life.
There is a blast from the past. Holy crap.
Go Google that, youngins. You're trying to move on, and I'm just digging this hole deeper. I'm sorry. This may be my last show, everybody. It's been fun.
You've hit bedrock and are continuing to dig. So anyway, that's the last story for our free listeners. So we're going to move on to the Patreon portion of our show now. So
if this is the quality you're getting in the free section, just think about what's coming up in the Patreon section.
It's way better, I guarantee. Like, it's super, super good. We changed
just
the suits.
Muted for the rest of the show? Is that what happens?
Yeah, we have to go put on our suits and ties now. Anyway, you can
would that be your Patchman suit? Sorry, I'm going to stop now.
It's totally lost control. So anyway, you can find links to the stories we talked about on our website at defensivesecurity.org. Just look for episode 315. You can find me on social media. It's at Jerry at infosec.exchange. Infosec.exchange is the domain. So if you're interested in connecting with me, that's the place to do it. You can maybe get a hold of me on LinkedIn, but probably not. So where can I find you?
Also on infosec.exchange, which is your fabulous Mastodon server with all sorts of security folks hanging out there. Lurg, L-E-R-G there, and also on X, Lurg, L-E-R-G, and on LinkedIn. I'm usually on LinkedIn making snarky commentary about the craziness that is LinkedIn under my name.
That is the one thing that has gotten me onto LinkedIn lately. So see you later to everybody that's not on the Patreon site. So talk to you next time.